Hey there everyone, I'm Jeff. This is Tabletop Toolbox, and there is so much to discuss here on this 24th episode of the weekly Ratchet. I'm going to talk about some board games, you're going to talk about some board games, I'm going to talk some more about board games. There's just so much board games. That's right, folks. Welcome back to the Weekly Ratchet. Thank you so much for joining me here on the channel. You know, I've opened this show several times over the past few weeks talking about how crazy busy these weeks have been and how there's so much going on. And this past week has been actually kind of laid back, kind of relaxing. It hasn't really been that bad. We've finally been enjoying some cooler temperatures up here in the sort of kind of northeast of the country. I did a little fire pit, in fact, over the weekend. Got a bunch of games played, lots to talk about here. Of course, there's still weeds just taking over the backyard, but whatever. I'll deal with those later. Today, I've got games to talk about. Quite a lot of games, and in fact, a lot of new stuff that I haven't chatted about on the channel here yet. So, let's go ahead and kick off the show. As always, I like to kick off the show with some new games here to the Treehouse, and I'm quite excited for this one because this is Dinogenics, the Park Manager Edition. Now, in this box is the New Arrivals expansion, and I've been chatting with Dinogenics designer Richard Keene, who was kind enough to provide me with this prototype. This is, I'm assuming, sort of a big box edition of this game. I'm hoping for an improved storage solution that combines the base game, the Controlled Chaos expansion, and of course this New Arrivals expansion. As you may know, this game cracked my top 10 over on the Dice Tower Top 100. I absolutely love Dinogenics, and in this expansion is just some tweaks to some of the existing systems within this worker placement game, and I really like what he's done with this, and I've already gotten to play it, so I'll talk a little bit more about it here in a little bit, but very excited for Dinogenics. I also finally got in my copy of Wormspan. I mentioned in the Dice Tower East recap that I really enjoyed my playthrough of this, and so I went ahead and did get a copy. I think this really does improve on the Wingspan formula, a game that I'm not very keen on. I think that's a fairly overhyped game, but this one really sort of streamlined some of the systems, but also added a good bit more strategy to it that doesn't just rely on that massive deck of cards and getting the right card when you need it. There's some new ideas in this, and I really like what he did with it, and I'm looking forward to getting this played again. I'm also really looking forward to picking up some of the deluxe edition bits of this, and there's a ton of them out there, but there's a particular seller out on Etsy who has these kind of metal acrylic pieces. The Dice Tower library actually has those in their copy, and I need about $100 so I can pick them up. Donations are accepted. Anyways, that is Wormspan by Stonemaier. I also got in, this is from Bezier Games, and this is the Colossal Cat in the Box. Now, I don't really know why I backed this. This was kind of one of those like, oh, I should just get it because I have the base Cat in the Box, which is much smaller than this. It's basically a travel size game. It's a little trick-taking game. It's basically just a deck of cards. If you don't know about Cat in the Box, this is a trick-taking game where you have 4 suits that are just colors, red, yellow, blue, and green. Red is the trump suit, and the twist of it being is that all the cards are simply black, and so when you play a card, you decide what color it is, and that sort of dictates what cards have already been played and what suits you may have or may not have anymore in your hand. You know, if you sort of pass on the blue suit and you instead play a red card, then you're sort of indicating that you no longer have any blue cards. But then if later you have a card and all the numbers of that have been played except for blue, which means you then can't play it because you don't have any blue, and you create a paradox. And it's a tough game for people to wrap their heads around. It was certainly tough for me to wrap my head around. I'm still not entirely sure that it's not really dependent on just pure dumb luck and how these cards come out. You have to shed a card at the beginning of each round, and you have to end the round with a card left in your hand. Anyways, I like it, but I really didn't need this. This adds an expansion, but it's really just kind of different boards that you're putting your tokens on to try and score some extra points, and I won't go into it. I don't even know if I'm going to open this. I might just kind of try and offload it. It's a good game. I just don't really think I need this huge big box edition. I also did not pay for the big stuffed cat that you could get with this because my daughter thought it was weird looking. So anyways, that is Colossal Cat in the Box. And lastly, I'm very, very excited for this one. Fast Sloths. I talked about this one in my Dice Tower East recap, mentioned that I enjoyed playing it, and I thought that my girls might like playing it, my wife and daughter, but it's really expensive out on the secondary market. Well, I made a post in a Richmond-based board game, Facebook page, and someone reached out to me a few days later and asked if I was still looking for a copy and offered to sell this quite cheap. In fact, I even gave him a couple extra bucks just to kind of make it worth his while. And we've already gotten to play this, so I'll talk about it here in a little bit. That is the new games here at the library. Let's go ahead and get to the question of the week. I don't have a library. I don't know why I said that. Ignore that. It has been a day here a little bit. All right, question of the week. Last week I asked if you could change something about the board game hobby from your perception. What would you like to be able to change? I got some great answers. Let me go ahead and kick things off. Up first is Wonderflonium, who said he would like to be more involved in the online board game community, either through playing games online or being more active in online discussions. I think that's very fair. I will say that some of those online forums can get quite a bit nasty. There's definitely a lot of gatekeeping and such in those online communities, but there are good ones out there as well, and there are certainly some great folks out there. So I wish you luck in that. I'll also say that I've done a handful of online gaming, Board Game Arena and also Tabletop Simulator. I'm kind of off and on active on both of those. In fact, if you ever want to play some games on Board Game Arena, let me know. And of course, again, there are folks who will say, oh, that's not real gaming. They tend to get very proud, in how they approach physical gaming versus online gaming. But I think that's kind of nonsense. I think if you get a chance to check out some new games, especially, getting to play something that maybe you're not able to purchase or not able to find, that's certainly a great way to explore some of those games. So I say go for it and good luck. C.R. Pohl said that he would change how he let, quote, board game snobs make him feel bad for liking mass market games, citing Monopoly as a prime example. And that is a good example, again, of folks in the hobby who are kind of disparaging of things that they really need not be disparaging of. And I can certainly say that I am, to some extent, guilty of that as well. I don't like Monopoly. I don't think it's a great game. I do think the history of it is pretty interesting, but I also recognize that a lot of older games like Monopoly will have a lot of nostalgic appeal for certain folks. Maybe their family played a lot. Maybe it's just one of those things that they were introduced to and have fond memories of, and that's fine. And I think, again, we have to sort of understand that some folks are going to like things that we don't like, some folks are not going to like things that we do like, and we just kind of have to let that roll off of our backs. And that's certainly something that, when it comes to the online community, you can just get a lot of that opposition that doesn't really need to be there. And it's frustrating, and I can certainly understand that. Penny5636, a first-time poster, said she's been in the hobby for about 2.5 years and hasn't had the chance to attend any conventions yet. She said she'd love to meet fellow gamers who are as passionate about the hobby as she is. That is a great aspiration to have. We talked about conventions here on the Weekly Ratchet back in episode number 22, so certainly feel free to go and check that out, see if maybe you can find some suggestions on ways to approach that goal, and maybe I will get to see you at a convention here sometime soon. Mary Beth Boyd here in Ashland said she'd love to play games at higher player counts, that they normally play games at 2 players, as with little kids, it can be tough to get together with friends. I can certainly appreciate that. I know when my daughter was young, either I had to go out by myself or we just played games at home, and it was just the 2 of us, of course. Certainly, I hope there's someone locally who can help you out with that. Kay said that she wished she discovered the board game hobby when she was younger. Yes, I absolutely feel this. And in fact, I remember a comment from Mike Delisio of the Dice Tower, actually on his Sporadically Bored podcast quite a while ago. It was an older episode talking about just that same thing, that he wished he had gotten into the hobby sooner. And I think from his perspective, he was also talking about kind of as a social media creator, wishing that he had gotten into that a little sooner. And I certainly wish that. I'm in my mid-40s. I've been doing this now about 4 years, and there's so many instances where I wish I'd gotten into this sooner, that I'd gotten to check out games that are now very, very hard to find a chance to play because they've just kind of faded into the dark, So yeah, I can certainly appreciate that a very good bit. Board Game Vibes, another first-time poster. They wrote a rather long post about essentially wishing people were a bit more welcoming and open to playing games with new people. Now, there was a lot to unpack in John's post here, but I have actually experienced something very similar to this as well. Now, he talked about going out and, actually physically meeting people, exchanging contact information, and just either never hearing from them again or just never being able to put anything together. For me personally, there are a number of social media pages here, based here in the Richmond area. A lot of people who, are active on those groups, but every time I reach out to try and get a game played, especially if I have a prototype or something, a review copy that I'm trying to get played, it's just crickets. Just nobody responds, or there's always a conflict, whatever. And it can be really frustrating because it's kind of like, this is social media. It's like the whole point, right, is connecting with other folks, and yet everyone just seems so reluctant to actually go out and meet new folks. And boy, I wish I had some great answers for you. I do have another post coming up here that I'll kind of share some ideas with as well. But all I can say is, man, just keep on keeping on, and don't hesitate to create your own group. Try and create that poll to get people in. It can be one thing to go out and meet folks, and I certainly salute you on that one. And like I said, you just got to kind of keep trying, and like I said, sort of create an environment maybe that folks will want to come to, and just keep at it, and I wish you the best of luck. Tony Lawhorn said if he could change anything, it'd be the amount of time he had available for gaming. And I am sure that a lot of folks would share that same sentiment, Tony, myself for sure. Sean Turney, another first-time poster, said he wished he could find people in his community to play more games with, that even with 2 game cafes in his community, having success at those or on Meetup has been difficult. And yes, that goes exactly with what John was saying just above. It can be difficult to get folks to step out of their shells and play games with new people. And I feel for you, I really do. Carl Tunist had a really personal insight to share about how he was a bit of a sore loser when he first started playing games, and as a result, his wife really won't play games with him anymore, and he wishes he could go back and change that. That was a very deep and personal insight, and I really appreciate you sharing that. I can certainly say from my own perspective that that's something I've struggled with as well. I'm not always terrible at losing games. Sometimes I just, things just don't go my way, whatever. I can tend to get a little flustered at the dice consistently just provide bad luck, or if I'm sitting there watching someone just run away from me with the score. That can certainly be frustrating. The only thing I'll say, and I don't know that this is a topic I really should weigh in on very much, but I feel like recognizing that and being open to the fact that, maybe you sort of caused that rift might be a good opportunity to open up that discussion with your wife and say, hey, I realize my mistakes and I'm willing to, try and be better at it, and maybe we can give it another go. So I certainly wish you the best of luck, and that is all I will weigh in on there with that one. Jamie Wiley said he wants to appreciate gameplay over production better, and that he's getting better at not craving super deluxeified games. I think that is quite a good goal, especially for a lot of folks. I know that production has certainly become a bigger and bigger draw for folks, and then you get these games and they just are absolutely terrible to play. I have certainly been burned by a number of those, and there have also been times where the production of a game makes me get a game that I don't actually like to play. It may still be a decent game, but just not something that's right for me. And right now, actually, I'm looking at Luthier, the next game from Paverson Games, and it uses, area control. It uses a lot of dice. It uses systems that I just don't really care for, even though it's a game about making instruments, and it is certainly a very, very overproduced game. And I'm trying to tell myself that it is something I probably just need to stay away from, as much as that is difficult to accept. So I can appreciate that for sure. Derek, lastly, also shared the sentiment of wishing he had more time to play with his gaming friends and lamented the challenge of getting schedules to sync up. Derek, I certainly wish I could come play with you, and I can certainly appreciate that. I will say the one thing I've had a little bit of luck with is just creating a meetup event, sort of hosting an event and just saying, hey, we're going to play games all day. Show up whenever you want. And, hopefully we can get something played. I do make sure I have a couple of tables running so that you can kind of stagger start times. And, hopefully there's always something that's getting started that folks can join into. Doesn't always work, but I will say that I've had some pretty good success with that so far. I will share that for me, my biggest challenge is certainly finding people to play games with. Time hasn't really been too much of a struggle, although for me it's certainly, if events are happening later in the day, it might be a little difficult for me to get out of the house and sort of find that ambition to leave the house when it's dark outside. What are you crazy? I'm too old for that. And all I can really say is, man, if you're one of those folks who sort of just keeps playing with the same people over and over again, man, look for other opportunities. Maybe find some ambition to step out of your shell and meet some new folks. You might just find some fantastic people and have some fantastic experiences. And we need to meet in the middle. It is difficult, especially, and I've talked about this in the past. I'm not a very outgoing person. I'm not a very social person. Once I break that ice, I'm fine. I can have a good time. I even had a recent experience I'll talk about here in just a moment where I was invited to play some games with some new people here in town, and I was really nervous about doing it. And there was even a small time when I was like, gosh, maybe they'll cancel and I don't have to go out. But they didn't, and I didn't, and I ended up having a very fun time. So, let's try and meet in the middle and play some games. All right, that is it for question of the week. For next week, this next question is inspired from some recent events, but not from me personally, so don't let this alarm anyone. But the question I want to ask is, what is it about games that keeps you coming back? What is it that gets you to keep sitting down at the table, even if maybe you're not great at it, or maybe if it is a struggle to get games played, or maybe if it is a struggle to find the time? What makes you want to keep coming back? And has there ever been a time or a reason that has made you ever reconsider gaming as a hobby for you? Like I said, this isn't something coming from me personally, but it is sort of a recent event or a recent event has triggered this. So I'm very interested in knowing your thoughts for next week. That is it. Let's go ahead and get to some recently played games. Okay, I have been tongue twisting throughout several takes of this entire video, so I'm hoping I can get through this in one shot. Let's see. Up first, last week I got to play Black Friday. Now this is a 2023 release from Friedemann Friese, and it's actually a remake of a previous game from him. He actually did this back in 2010, and this is, I don't know, I guess a fresh take or a redo, whatever. This is a stock market game, a very, very pure stock market experience, if you will. There's nothing else to it, right? You're basically buying shares, selling shares, and then from time to time buying gold. The gold price continues to go up throughout the game. It never goes down, and you can never sell your gold. It's good to buy it early when it's very cheap. You know it's going to multiply in value, but you can get into a situation, as I did when we played this, where I was just completely out of money and I had no shares left to sell, and I basically just burnt out the rest of the game, hurrying up trying to trigger the end game. Played this with my buddy Daniel, who's just a big stock market kind of a guy. The funny part of it was that at 2 players you have to use an AI called MIBS, which is the minimally intelligent. This is in German. Let me try this again. Minimally intelligent broker service. It's not working. Anyways, we played with MIBS, and MIBS beat us both, which was really embarrassing. There's even a thing in the rule book that says if you lose to MIBS, maybe you should reconsider your investment strategy. Very sound advice. Definitely not a game I'm going to get back into anytime soon. However, this was a Dice Tower review copy, so I'll be putting a video together of it here at some point soon. And of course, I'll have to get at least another play-in of it. We'll see how that goes. After that, we played Star Wars Outer Rim. Daniel brought this one over. He really wanted to show it to me because he felt that it was very similar to the game of Firefly, which of course I've talked about a bunch here on the channel. And he was right. This is a kind of an open world game where you're simply going to different planets in the Star Wars kind of universe, trying to find folks. You're basically a bounty hunter, and you're trying to find folks. You're trying to pick up bounties. You're trying to get crew on your ship. You're trying to get upgrades on your ship. You're trying to get weapons and gear that might help you. Sometimes you're fighting in space. Sometimes you're fighting on the planet. And then, of course, as you capture these bounties, you can either just take them out and get some quick points, or you can deliver them to wherever it is that they are wanted to get extra points and maybe extra money. I picked a starting character in this that was quite a difficult one, and I was like, sure, I'll give that a shot. And it did not pan out for me very well. It was also a game where I felt like I just had bad luck after bad luck, because I kind of kept trying to find people and I could just never find them. And also I had one encounter that actually cost me a crew member, which apparently is somewhat rare to happen in this game. I didn't dislike it, but I definitely didn't have a great playthrough. It's one of those games where, like Firefly, you can just sit there and feel like you are just slogging to try and get things done, while another player at the table is, oh, here's that guy I need. Oh, here's that card. This thing's absolutely perfect for me. And, kind of like you draw the card and, oh, the guy I need's right there. So I already have it. And that can definitely be a little frustrating. But I did enjoy the experience. Not a game I think I need to pick up. I don't think it does enough different from Firefly that, I would prefer it over Firefly. It felt a little bit more restrictive in how you kind of get around this board. It kind of has this rim of planets, which was a little funky to even sort of, manage the space of. It didn't have just that kind of very open, almost do exactly whatever you want to do that Firefly gives you. But I'm glad I got to try this. I appreciated him bringing it over. Then over the weekend, we got to play Fast Sloths, as I have mentioned. Showed this to my wife and daughter, and I was really, really proud of my little kiddo. She took off with this for a very short while. She was winning the game. I then triggered the end game, and in fact, my wife also managed to sort of end the game on her turn. When you end the game, everyone else gets their final turn, and my wife won the tiebreaker. So they had a lot of fun with this, as I was hoping that they would. A really neat little movement game where you have to move these animals to then carry your sloth around to wherever your leaves are. But as you collect these leaves, it makes you a little more difficult to move around, if that makes sense, because you get fewer and fewer cards as the game goes on. It just makes the game a little bit more challenging. I enjoy it. Again, I don't think it's worth the $90 or $100 that people are trying to sell this online, but I'm really glad I got to check this out. And I think when I come across some discretionary funds, I'm going to try and pick up the expansion on, which you can get from Britain, of all places, which just increases the different variations of the map that you can build. So this was a lot of fun. Fast Sloths. We also broke out, I talked about this I think 2 or 3 episodes ago. This is the Final 9 expansion, basically a add-on to the original Final 9 game, a disc golf game from Monkey Mind Games out of Australia. I think I mentioned, I think that was episode maybe 21, that I have original Final 9. It was a Kickstarter that I backed, and I got it. Nothing special. Just bought the game and played it. Really, really liked it. Did a review out on the Dice Tower channel, and the designer reached out to me, and we've kind of been buddies ever since. So when I found out about this expansion, he sent me this copy, and we got to play it. It's a fun game. My only qualm with this, and I'll get this out of the way up front, is that it basically plays on those little playing cards. You have cards that represent the discs that you're using, and then you have these luck cards and skill cards. So basically the turn order is you play a disc, you determine the flight path, you can play skill cards to alter that flight path and sort of determine where the disc is going to land. Then you draw a random card from the event deck or action deck. It kind of has a multitude of cards in it. And if that card is red or gray, it could have a negative effect on your flight path, wind, a tree, just bad luck, right? And then you get a chance to play any gold luck cards that could further alter that flight and maybe kind of get you out of the whatever negative situation that card may have put you in. And then you find out where the disc lies and you go from there. The base game was very simple with that. And in this new expansion, he's got sort of more complicated forest courses, so you've got a lot more trees to worry about, and when you hit a cluster of trees, you actually draw another card from the deck, and depending on the color of that card, it sort of dictates what happens. Maybe your disc gets kicked to the left, kicked to the right, flies through without any problems, or just drops right there at the base of the trees. And that's neat, and that's very, very realistic. Obviously, you want to try and avoid the tree clusters, but you may not always have the versatility in the discs that you need, and so that's kind of, I don't want to call it a negative, but unlike real disc golf, where you have a bag of discs, make sure I say that correctly, you have a bag of discs that you're using throughout the course. And, you generally always have your discs. In this, you may not have the disc that gets you where you need to go. You may have a driver when you need a putter, vice versa. I certainly had an instance where I had just a whole handful of putters and I needed to go multiple spaces and just could not do it. Now, there is a card trading element where you can trade with a fellow player, which again is very realistic to the hobby of disc golf. Many times I've had someone say, oh, here, try this out, see how this works for you. And I think that's fantastic. But sometimes my wife didn't have what I needed either, or she really needed it for her next shot. It's kind of like, sorry, I need to hold on to this. But the one thing that can be a little difficult with it is that the courses that you play on are also represented by little cards. And you've got these little tiny wooden discs that represent where your disc is. And I just wish that it had a larger play area. I kind of wish the cards were about the size of this box, and I could, just have a much easier time of seeing the icons on the map. He's added a bunch of things with like sloped terrain, even slopes underneath the basket itself. And we played several holes before remembering that those were there, and we had not been playing them correctly. So still a good game, and I really like it. I think that there could be some little variants to the discs that I wouldn't mind checking out, maybe actually letting you sort of draw a hand of disc cards that then when you played it, you would actually just take it back. Much more realistic to disc golf, but also could kind of make the game a little too easy, possibly. Not sure. And as far as the card thing goes, I'd have to kind of resort to some printing on my own there, which I'd always meant to do and just never really got around to it. But still a neat game, and one I'm looking forward to doing a video of here on the channel. Final 9. All right, let me see. I think 2 more to go. So then we played Dinogenics. Nope, I had it right. Sorry. Dinogenics. So we played this just yesterday, my wife and I. And as I kind of mentioned, this looks to sort of augment some of the systems already within the game. This is a worker placement game. You're trying to build a dinosaur park. You're collecting these cards, and then you have to be able to play a set of cards to be able to then put a dinosaur in your park. And that's fine. I've always been good with that system. There's a lot of different things going on in this game. There's a lot of different ways that you can get things done. There are different buildings that you can purchase, different sort of scoring opportunities, different almost engines that you can build. Your carnivores need meat, for example, and so you could possibly buy a farm that then generates that food that you need for the carnivores, makes things a little easier, kind of frees up an action that you don't have to keep taking to keep getting that meat. He's also added skills to this so that you can actually augment the abilities of the workers as you're putting them out on the board, which is really, really cool. I really, really like that idea. The only problem that I had with this game was, again, I was having some really, really bad luck. In this case, in the instance of not being able to get the cards that I needed to get the dinosaurs out. There are now so many dinosaurs in this game. He's added at least, I think 3 or 4 more sort of core dinosaurs and then another 4 or 5 elite dinosaurs with this expansion. And it just bloats the deck. And so you go and you draw 3 cards. You're trying to look for one dinosaur. You draw 3 cards. You don't get any of that dinosaur. There are now ways that you can get some wild DNA cards. You can go and convert DNA cards into a wild, but that burns a ton of actions to get that done. And there's also only so many times you can do that in a single round. That space fills up, especially in a 2-player game. You can only take it once in an entire season of the game. And so I don't know, I'm going to reach out to Richard Keene, kind of share with him my thoughts and just say, hey, there's got to be some other ways to get some cards into our hands so that we can have a little bit more flexibility. I love all the stuff that he added to the game, but it's just becoming too hard to make dinosaurs in a dinosaur game. So I still enjoyed it. Love the game. And I think it could be pretty easily maybe just take some of the dinosaurs out, just sort of thin that deck out a little bit and maybe increase your odds of getting some stuff done. That is Dinogenics Park Manager. I don't know if he's going to rename the entire game or if this is, if it's just going to be Dinogenics New Arrivals. I'm not really sure. I got to talk to him a little bit more, but I'll also be doing a video of this on the channel as well, and I am really looking forward to it. Dinogenics. Lastly, last night, as I've kind of alluded to, I met up with Miss Mary Beth and her husband Ben, followers here of the channel. Well, she is. Her husband had no idea who I am, which is totally fine. And we played Lisboa by Vital Lacerda. This is a game that, very, very heavy game from Lacerda, often regarded one of his heaviest games. Also, a very, very thematic game, although it was so difficult to play that I just kind of lost sight of that theme because I was trying to keep track of all the different mechanisms and actions in this game. I can't begin to go into how this game plays or what it does, but it is based on the city of Lisbon, Portugal, which was destroyed back in the 1700s. I did look this up just a little bit. In a matter of like an hour, there was a massive earthquake, and then a tsunami hit the city about 40 minutes later, and then the whole town just caught on fire as it was a celebration of, I believe it was All Saints Day, and so there were like candles all over the place in houses, and the vibrations and everything just knocked candles over, and the entire town went up in flames. And so you start off this game with the city essentially destroyed. You have these cubes all over the board representing the different types of damage: earthquake damage, fire damage, and flood damage. And you are trying to rebuild it. You're trying to work with the various nobles of the city, of the country, whatever, to sort of rebuild Lisbon. And it's a lot of complex inner workings, and it was very difficult for me to remember. I had watched a video on how to play, so I kind of showed up more or less understanding the rules, but without any clear idea of a strategy. I tried to look that up too, but it's difficult to find that kind of information without watching really long YouTube videos. But there's a lot of different, every action has different costs, and for me it was a matter of saying, okay, I need to build a building. For that I need money. I need to do this to get money, but for that I need goods, so I need to produce goods. And I had to kind of reverse engineer several turns and then figure out, okay, here's what I need to do right now. Do I have the card that lets me do that? And again, what's the most efficient way to kind of get through all those different actions? Mary Beth and her husband had played the game very often, and so obviously there was an advantage on that side of the table. I just did not have that much experience with the game. And also her husband completely clobbered us in this game. And so they asked me at the end of the game, well, what did you think of it? What was your first impressions? And I'm kind of sitting there going, well, it really kind of sucked to get my butt whooped that badly in the first playthrough. But in all honesty, yeah, I enjoyed the playthrough. I enjoyed getting to check out the game. It was a difficult first play because of just getting clobbered. I mean, his score was 50% higher than my score, and that's a big swing, which again, I understand it. I understand how that happens. It's not like, oh, the game's stuck. No, I get it. But it can definitely just sort of crush your spirit a little bit when you're like, okay, I'm going to go into this really, really hard game. I'm going to try and make sure I know it ahead of time. I'm going to make sure I'm prepared. I'm going to try and, at least show some face here, and you just get absolutely spanked. But very glad I got to play it. Very glad I got to knock this one off the list. Lacerda games, as we chatted about at the end of that playthrough, they're very, very hard to get to the table, and I have a number of them in my collection that just kind of sit there collecting dust. So it was great to be able to play a new game. It was great to get to meet some new folks, and I thank them very much for having me over. And I thank you very much for watching the weekly Ratchet. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your comments and input as always. And I look forward to putting another episode together next week. I'll see you then, folks. Cheers.